When Mystery Incorporated arrives in the forgotten town of Hollow Creek, all they expect is sun and a little peace. But one eerie night changes everything, chains dragging through the darkness, ghostly whispers from the old gold mine, and a dusty figure rising from the shadows. Who, or what, is guarding the lost treasure? And why is everyone too afraid to get close? The dirt road wound through the hills like an old scar on the land, dry and cracked under the summer sun. The mystery machine rumbled forward, its blue and green paint dulled by dust. Fred drove with steady hands, eyes focused on the horizon. Daphne sat beside him, flipping through an aged local newspaper. Hollow Creek, Gold Town Gone Ghost Town, read the headline, printed in faded ink. In the back, Velma adjusted her glasses and jotted notes while Shaggy and Scooby-Doo munched noisily on a triple-decker sandwich, completely unaware that their snack would be the last moment of calm. As they passed beneath a warped wooden sign that read, "Welcome to Hollow Creek, EST 1885, the air felt colder. The town was nestled in a valley, surrounded by pine-covered hills and silence. Houses leaned like tired men, their shutters broken and porches abandoned. The only sign of life came from a single rusted pickup outside the Hollow Creek General Store. Like, did we drive into a ghost town, or did everyone just run away screaming? Shaggy asked, peeking through the window. I'm not sure, Velma murmured. But something definitely scared them off. They stopped at a small gas station on the edge of town. The pump attendant, an old man with skin like leather and eyes like coal, limped over with a jerry can. You folks just passing through? He asked, voice rough as gravel. We're here to explore the mine, Fred replied, stepping out of the van. We heard some strange stories and, the old man cut him off. You heard the miners back, didn't you? Velma perked up. You mean the miner ghost? I mean the miner phantom, the man hissed. Dusty chains, glowing eyes. He walks at night to guard the treasure buried deep in that cursed mine. Ever since he came back, people disappear, tools vanish, and no one sleeps. The team exchanged glances. Daphne raised an eyebrow. Sounds like a mystery to me. A dangerous one, the old man warned. If you've got brains, you'll keep driving. Ignoring the warnings, they drove deeper into town and checked into the only lodging still operating, a worn but charming inn run by a woman named Martha Bell. She greeted them with a nervous smile and a tray of cookies. You kids sure picked a strange time to visit, she said. That mine's been sealed for years, but lately. Well, we've been hearing things. Chains? Velma asked. Voices, Martha whispered. And lights. Blue ones, dancing out of the hills. That night, the inn creaked and groaned under the weight of memory. Scooby and Shaggy tried to sleep, surrounded by stacks of snacks and pillows, but a sound in the hallway jolted them upright. A heavy clanking noise echoed outside the door, like metal dragging across wood. Then came the low hum of a ghostly voice, unintelligible but terrifying. Shaggy peeked through the keyhole, trembling. A figure stood at the end of the hallway, cloaked in dust and chains that clattered with every step. Its face was hidden beneath a wide miner's hat, but two glowing eyes burned from the darkness. Zzz ghost. Scooby stammered. The figure turned and vanished into thin air. Shaggy and Scooby bolted into Fred's room, dragging Velma and Daphne out of bed. By the time they all returned to the hallway, it was empty. Except for muddy boot prints leading out the back door. The next morning, determined to investigate, the gang hiked to the entrance of Hollow Creek Mine. The path was steep and lined with broken signs reading, "Keep out," and "Condemned." When they reached the mine, they found the entrance sealed with rotted boards and a thick chain. Fred removed one of the boards carefully, just enough for Velma to peek inside. She shone a flashlight into the darkness and gasped. There's fresh equipment in there, modern gear. Someone's been digging recently. Maybe looking for treasure? Daphne asked. Or hiding something, Velma replied. This ghost wants people to stay out, but someone clearly wants in. As they examined the entrance, a loud mechanical wail filled the air. An old siren, perched on a nearby pole, blared unexpectedly. Then a voice, distorted and low, echoed through the valley, "Leave now, or be buried with the rest." Fred grabbed Daphne's hand and pulled her back from the mine. Shaggy screamed and tried to run, but tripped over Scooby, sending them both tumbling into a pile of rocks. When the siren cut off, silence returned, but something had changed. The fear was heavier now, the mystery deeper. Velma looked at the others, eyes sharp. This wasn't just a scare tactic. Someone's watching us. Fred nodded. Tomorrow, we go in. The sun filtered through gray clouds the next morning, casting eerie shadows over Hollow Creek. Fred stood outside the inn with a map in hand, studying the terrain surrounding the mine. Velma hovered beside him, tapping notes into her tablet. There's more to this than a simple ghost story, she said. The mine was closed after a series of mysterious collapses in the 60s. But there's no official record of who owned the land after that. Daphne, brushing dust off her purple scarf, glanced at the hills. You think someone's digging illegally? Possibly, Velma said. But why the elaborate ghost disguise? Maybe it's, like, an over-the-top way to scare people off, Shaggy suggested nervously. And guess what? It's working. Rag Reed. Scooby added, hiding behind him with a shiver. Despite their reluctance, Fred convinced the gang to return to the mine before anyone else interfered. They arrived just as a cool breeze swept through the trees, rattling branches like bones. The boarded-up entrance remained untouched, but a set of fresh footprints, large, booted, and heavy, led around to the rear slope of the hill. There's another way in, Fred whispered, crouching near the trail. Whoever's sneaking into the mine knows the layout better than we do. The gang followed the tracks through underbrush and around a crumbling outbuilding once used as a tool shack. Inside, they found more clues, an oil lantern still warm, a discarded blueprint of the mine layout, and a torn badge marked with the initials, PMC, Pacific Mining Consortium, Velma muttered. They left Hollow Creek in 1971. But if someone still has their equipment, then someone has access to the old tunnels, Fred concluded. Suddenly, Scooby perked up and sniffed the air. Ruro, don't say it, Shaggy pleaded, already inching backward. But it was too late. A rattling chain echoed from behind the shack. The gang turned as a shadow fell over the doorway. There, standing tall and silent, was the miner Phantom. He raised one arm, metal chains slithering across the ground, and let out a guttural growl. His eyes glowed pale blue beneath a veil of dust. Without warning, he stepped forward, and vanished into the hillside through a secret crevice hidden behind moss and timber. Fred raced after him, pulling the others forward. There's a hidden entrance. Come on. They squeezed through the narrow opening into the cool darkness of the mine. The air smelled of earth and oil. The narrow tunnel opened into a wide cavern laced with support beams and old mining carts. Cobwebs clung to the walls, and strange symbols were scratched into the rock. Shaggy and Scooby trembled with every echo, the sound of their footsteps multiplied in the cavernous dark. Like, what kind of ghost doodles ancient graffiti? Shaggy asked. Not a ghost, Velma said, shining her flashlight on the markings. These are directions, coded, maybe, pointing to something deeper inside. The team pressed forward, ducking beneath collapsing beams and navigating winding corridors. At one junction, Daphne found a small metal tag on the ground labeled Shaft C4, and Velma cross-referenced it on the blueprint. This shaft leads straight to the old storage vault, she said. If there's treasure, or something someone wants to hide, it'll be there. As they descended deeper, they found signs of recent activity, fresh wool tracks from a cart, piles of stone recently dug out, and a modern generator humming faintly in the distance. Definitely not abandoned, Fred whispered. But just as they turned a corner, a trap was triggered. A series of ropes snapped above them, sending a cascade of barrels rolling down the tunnel. The gang scattered. Scooby and Shaggy diving into a pit of hay-stuffed mining sacks, Velma tripping but catching herself, and Fred pulling Daphne to safety at the edge. Trap doors. Timed distractions. Someone doesn't want us down here, Fred said, brushing dust off his shirt. As they regrouped, Velma examined the rigging. This was set up recently, whoever did this knows we're here. Just then, they heard something strange, a rhythmic pounding, like hammer on metal. It echoed from deep within the mine. Someone's digging, Daphne whispered. Still. The team crept toward the sound. In the distance, just past a series of ancient carts and collapsed beams, they spotted a lantern swinging on a hook, and two figures. One was the miner Phantom, tall and looming, guarding the shaft. The other was a shorter man in coveralls, hammering at the rock wall with feverish energy. Fred pulled the group behind a wooden barricade. That's not a ghost. That's a partner. Then who's under the mask? Daphne asked. They didn't have time to find out. The Phantom turned suddenly, as if sensing their presence, and let out a ghostly howl. The lantern shattered, and darkness swallowed the mine. Shaggy screamed. Scooby barked. The ground beneath them trembled. And then, the tunnel collapsed behind them, trapping the gang inside. The collapse sent a choking cloud of dust through the tunnel, blanketing the gang in darkness so thick they could barely breathe. Scooby-Doo whimpered softly, his ears twitching as he clung to Shaggy. Fred's flashlight flickered, then died, leaving them in pitch black. Is everyone okay? Fred called out, coughing. I think so, Daphne answered from nearby. I'm scraped, but nothing broken. I lost my glasses, Velma groaned. Again. I think I swallowed a cobweb, Shaggy sputtered, spitting and shivering. And something cold just brushed past my leg, Ruo, Scooby whispered, tail tucked tightly between his legs. A deep, guttural breath echoed beside them, low and inhuman. Fred reached out and yanked Scooby's collar, pulling him closer to the group. Don't move, he whispered. We're not alone down here. Velma fumbled on her knees until her fingers wrapped around her glasses. Sliding them back on, she activated the mini light on her tablet, casting a pale glow around them. The beam revealed narrow, rocky walls and a winding tunnel just wide enough for two. More importantly, it revealed large claw-like marks etched into the dirt near Scooby's feet. Daphne squinted. Those aren't from mining equipment. Fred leaned closer. They're fresh. Shaggy clutched Scooby. Nope. Nope. I vote we go the other way. There is no other way, Velma replied. The tunnel behind us collapsed. We have to keep moving forward. As they moved cautiously through the tight corridor, the strange breathing faded. But now and then, a distant scraping sound echoed around them, impossible to pinpoint. Every few steps, they passed old mining signs, vault access, shaft C, for, danger, structural instability, do not enter beyond this point. That's an invitation if I've ever heard one, Shaggy muttered. After nearly 20 minutes of tense crawling, they emerged into a wider chamber. In the center stood a rusted mining elevator, its cage door hanging ajar. A heavy-duty generator hummed beside it, with a freshly used fuel canister lying nearby. Someone had been here recently, and powered the lift. Velma examined the controls. Looks like this elevator leads straight to the lower vault. The blueprint suggested that's where the miners hid their most valuable finds. And probably where our ghost keeps showing up, Fred added. Or digging, Daphne said, pointing to the fresh pickaxe marks on the stone wall beside the shaft. Fred nodded. All right, gang, let's split up. Daphne and I will take the elevator and see where it leads. Velma, you take Shaggy and Scooby back through this tunnel and look for another exit, or another clue. Nope. Shaggy shouted. I am not leaving the group. What if the ghost finds us? He always finds us, Velma said dryly. Rokai, Scooby sighed. But Fred's plan prevailed. The elevator groaned as he and Daphne descended into the earth. Meanwhile, Velma led Shaggy and Scooby into a side tunnel marked Storage Shaft 7B. The narrow path twisted and turned, until they stumbled into a room filled with crates. Some were labeled PMC Archives, others bore faint markings in Spanish. Velma opened one and found stacks of old mining ledgers, handwritten notes, and gold dust samples sealed in vials. This explains a lot, she said. The company didn't abandon the mine because it was empty. They were hiding something valuable. Gold? Shaggy asked. Something more dangerous, Velma replied, pulling out a blueprint stamped confidential. A hidden chamber beneath the vault. Not on any public record. Scooby barked suddenly, alert. A low hum vibrated through the floor. What was that? Shaggy whispered. Above them, Fred and Daphne reached the lower vault. The walls were covered in soot and dust, but fresh boot prints marked the floor. Fred followed the trail to a large steel door with a digital lock, recently installed. Someone's modernized this place, Daphne said. Ghosts don't need security codes. Fred tried a few combinations but failed. Whoever's behind this has resources. This isn't a simple haunting, it's a cover-up. Just then, from the shadows, a figure stepped forward. The miner phantom. He raised his chain-covered arms, his voice booming through the chamber. Leave now, or be buried forever. Fred and Daphne backed away as rocks began to shake above them. Meanwhile, Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby stumbled across a ventilation shaft. The grating had been recently removed. Scooby sniffed. Red and Raffney. You can smell them? Velma asked. Ruha. Scooby barked and took off. They followed the shaft's tight path until they reached a metal grate above the vault, peeking directly into the confrontation. Fred! Velma shouted. It's a hologram. The ghost's an illusion. Fred looked up. Say what? The figure, it's being projected from the wall. It's not real. Daphne grabbed a nearby rock and hurled it at the source. Sparks flew, and the miner phantom vanished. A furious voice echoed through the mine. They know. The real villain, now exposed, turned and ran into the secret chamber behind the vault door, just as an explosion rocked the mine. The mine groaned like a living creature. Dust rained from the cracked ceiling as the echo of the explosion thundered down every shaft. Fred shielded Daphne with his arm while rubble clattered across the vault. The artificial phantom had vanished, but its illusion was nothing compared to the danger now threatening to bury them all alive. Everyone okay? Fred called out. We're fine. Velma's voice echoed from above. She was leaning through the ventilation grate, flashlight in hand. But the structural integrity of this place is shot. You need to get out of there, fast. But the vault's metal door had fused shut in the blast. Daphne tried to force it open. It's jammed. We're trapped. That's it. Shaggy wailed from above. This is how we go, buried under spooky gold and ghost holograms. Roo-ho-ho-ho, Scooby sobbed, pulling his ears over his eyes. Fred scanned the room, eyes sharp. No time to panic. Look, there's a breach in the wall. That blast opened a tunnel. Through a gaping crack in the stone, a dimly lit chamber beckoned. They climbed over debris and stepped inside, into a breathtaking underground cavern. Stalactites sparkled from the ceiling, and the floor shimmered with golden dust. In the center sat a large wooden chest, half buried in centuries of rock and earth. Around it, aged lanterns flickered, freshly lit. This is it, Daphne whispered. The hidden vault the ledgers talked about. And someone's been here, recently. As Fred approached the chest, Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby climbed through the shaft and joined them. Velma pulled out the confidential blueprint again. According to this, we're under Hollow Creek's oldest mining site, never officially mapped. Scooby sniffed the air and whimpered. "RHE's here." Suddenly, the ground trembled again. From the far shadows, a man stumbled forward, face covered in soot, eyes wide with fear. It was Mason Tully, the town's reclusive antique dealer. Fred stepped between him and the others. "So it was you. You staged the miner phantom." "No." Mason gasped. I followed someone down here. I was looking for clues for my museum, but I heard noises, saw lights, then I found him." "Him?" Daphne asked. "Behind that wall," Mason whispered. "He's searching for something deeper, something older than the mine." Velma narrowed her eyes. "You're not the mastermind. You're a pawn." The wall behind them rumbled. A panel slid open with mechanical precision, revealing a deeper corridor, illuminated by lanterns on automatic timers. The gang exchanged wary glances. Fred nodded. "Let's finish this." They stepped through the opening and found themselves in a passage unlike the rest of the mine, perfectly smooth, reinforced with metal beams and modern wiring. Strange symbols were carved into the walls, Spanish, Latin, and something more ancient. Velma ran her fingers over the carvings. "This wasn't built by miners. This looks like it predates the gold rush." They reached a door sealed by a biometric scanner, clearly not part of any ghost story. Just then, a voice boomed from hidden speakers. "You were warned not to interfere." The lights flickered. A shadow passed behind a frosted glass pane, too tall, too rigid to be Mason. The gang backed away as a deep mechanical hiss sounded. Suddenly, gas spewed from vents in the ceiling. "Back! Everyone out!" Fred shouted. Scooby darted first, dragging Shaggy by the collar. Daphne helped Mason, while Velma snatched the blueprint from the floor. As they emerged back into the cavern, the gas cloud chased them. Fred slammed the panel shut behind them. "We're dealing with someone with serious tech." "That was no miner, no ghost." Velma nodded. "That was a military-grade security system. This mine was repurposed for something else, something secret." "But, what does gold have to do with that?" Shaggy asked, eyes wide. Fred turned to Mason. "You said someone else came down here." "Who?" "I don't know his real name. Locals call him Harper. He bought land just outside town, said he was building a research facility. But no one ever saw what he researched." Scooby sniffed the ground, then barked. "Racks." They followed the footprints into a narrow stairwell carved into the rock. It spiraled deep into the mountain, every step colder than the last. At the bottom, they found a command room, walls lined with monitors, blueprints, and maps of Hollow Creek. A small drone buzzed in the corner, retreating the moment they stepped in. Velma's jaw dropped. "This guy's been watching the town. Every resident. Every move." "And us," Fred added, pointing at a paused video feed, Scooby and Shaggy running from the hologram earlier. Suddenly, an alarm blared. A mechanical voice announced, "Intruders detected. Initiating lockdown in T-60 seconds. Run!" Fred shouted. They scrambled back up the spiral staircase as steel doors slammed shut one by one behind them. Scooby barely squeezed through a gate as it locked. They burst into the cavern again, gasping, coughing, but alive. Behind them, the last door sealed with a heavy clang. Whatever secrets lay beyond were buried, for now. The wind howled through the abandoned streets of Hollow Creek as the gang returned to their motel. Though it was just past midnight, the town felt heavier than ever, weighed down by secrets and the echo of old ghosts, both literal and metaphorical. Inside, Velma spread out the evidence they had collected, the miner's mask, surveillance photos, blueprints, and the rusted nameplate reading H. Wilcox. Her eyes scanned every detail with intense focus. "This isn't just about gold," she muttered. "This is about control. Whoever Harper is, he's been manipulating this town for years, hiding beneath the legend of the miner phantom." Fred stood by the window, watching the flickering streetlight. "He's one step ahead of us. That hidden lab was military grade. What does a small mining town have to do with classified technology?" "I think I found part of the answer," Daphne said, holding up an old newspaper she had found at the antique shop. 10 years ago, a man named Henry Wilcox vanished while investigating abandoned Cold War bunkers rumored to run beneath Hollow Creek. He was a former intelligence officer. Velma connected the dots. If Harper is Wilcox, or working with him, then this miner phantom thing is just a smokescreen to keep people away while they excavate something bigger, something buried since the war. "Like top-secret tech?" Shaggy asked, wide-eyed. "Or weapons?" Daphne added. "Or giant evil robots that eat Scooby snacks?" Shaggy added, hiding behind Scooby. Scooby groaned, shaking his head. Fred paced. "Whatever they're looking for, they don't want anyone else near the mine. And that means we're close. Too close." Velma stood up. "Then it's time we stop reacting, and start setting a trap." At dawn, the gang put their plan into motion. Fred and Daphne returned to the mine entrance, placing hidden cameras and creating a fake news report about a team of geologists arriving to reopen the mine. "Let's see how Harper reacts to competition," Fred said. Meanwhile, Velma used Mason Tully's old connections to pose as a government investigator. She called Harper's landline under the pretense of needing access to his property. "I assure you," Harper replied coldly, "there's nothing of interest on my land. The ghost stories are just that. Stories." "Still," Velma replied calmly, "federal law requires me to inspect any underground installations near historical sites. I'll be by in an hour." Click. "He's rattled," Velma told the others. "Now we wait." Back at the motel, Scooby and Shaggy were posted at the window with binoculars, and an entire buffet of distraction snacks. "Like, we've got peanut butter jerky, chocolate donuts, and 12 bologna sandwiches." "Stakeouts are exhausting," Shaggy sighed. Just then, Scooby growled. "Rook!" Outside, a black SUV pulled away from Harper's cabin, headed straight for the mine. Zoinks! "He's falling for it." Fred radioed everyone. "Positions, now." They followed the SUV through back trails, staying hidden until Harper arrived at the mine entrance. Dressed in tactical gear, he disappeared inside with a duffel bag in hand. The gang moved in behind him. Inside the mine, Harper moved fast, disarming traps, using access codes, and activating machinery. The phantom costume was stuffed in his bag, along with a series of USB drives. Velma whispered, "He's deleting files. We can't let him escape." Fred nodded. "Shaggy, Scoob, time for some heroic distraction." "What? Like, can't we be the snack team again? Now." Fred pushed them forward. Reluctantly, Shaggy and Scooby charged down the tunnel. "Yaha, GG ghost guys coming through." Startled, Harper spun around, just as Scooby crashed into him, sending the duffel bag flying. USB drives scattered across the floor. The phantom mask clattered against the stone. Fred tackled Harper while Daphne tied his wrists with a bungee cord. "Game's over, Harper, or should we say, Wilcox." Harper sneered. "You children have no idea what you've uncovered." Velma held up the bag. "We'll find out soon enough. Every file. Every blueprint." Suddenly, a tremor shook the mine. A low alarm blared from a hidden panel. Harper's expression changed to panic. "No. You triggered the failsafe. This whole sector's wired to collapse if anyone tampers with the hard drives." Fred pulled the others back. "Run. Now." They raced through the tunnels as Harper screamed behind them. "You'll regret this. There's more buried here than you know." The mine rumbled with deafening fury. Just as they emerged into daylight, the entrance caved in behind them, dust and debris soaring into the sky. They collapsed on the ground, panting, as sirens wailed in the distance. Mason had called the authorities. Hours later, as the sun began to set, Hollow Creek stood quiet but peaceful. The sheriff confirmed that Harper, aka Henry Wilcox, was in custody, and a federal investigation had been launched. Velma stared at the collapsed mine entrance. "He almost got away with it." "If we hadn't followed the clues," Fred nodded. "He used fear as a cover for something far worse, illegal excavation, surveillance, even psychological warfare." "Like, maybe next time we just visit a beach," Shaggy muttered. "Rhea." "Ruribian." Scooby cheered. Daphne smiled. "Mystery solved. But something tells me this one might have a few layers left to uncover." They all turned toward the mine, now sealed forever. Or was it? 3 days after the collapse of Hollow Creek's infamous mine, the dust had finally settled, both literally and figuratively. The townspeople returned to their routines, the streets no longer shrouded in fear, but curiosity. Tourists began trickling back, drawn not by ghost stories, but by headlines of a criminal conspiracy buried beneath their feet. Inside the local diner, the Mystery Incorporated gang huddled in a booth over a stack of pancakes, coffee mugs, and exhausted smiles. "I just heard the news," said Sheriff Collins, approaching their table. Federal agents combed the site. They found fragments of prototype surveillance tech, Cold War documents, and something else. Velma raised an eyebrow. "Something else?" The sheriff pulled out a small, sealed evidence bag. Inside it, a jagged gold nugget, speckled with quartz. "It's real." The legend was true, at least in part. The mine did have gold, but not enough to justify all that Harper did. Turns out the real value was in the old bunker system the government abandoned. He just used the legend to keep everyone out while he ran his operation. Daphne shook her head. "So, all those lights, chains, ghost moans, smoke and mirrors," Fred said, sipping his coffee. "But good ones. Some of those traps were borderline genius. Like, and terrifying," Shaggy added. "Especially that floor that dropped us into the dummy mineshaft. My butt still hurts." "Yeah," Scooby muttered, rubbing his tail. Velma was more focused on the encrypted data they had recovered. "There's something bigger behind this. The files referenced Phase 2, but no one's been able to decrypt what that means. Whoever Harper was working with, they're still out there. Which is why we need to keep investigating," Fred declared. "We've unraveled one web. But it's part of a larger net." Daphne leaned back in the booth. "For now, we've given Hollow Creek back to its people. That's what matters." Just then, Mason Tully walked in with his dog, Cookie. He looked healthier, brighter. "You kids really pulled this town back from the brink," he said, tipping his cap. "I'd given up. But you reminded me that the truth still matters." Velma nodded. "Always." Later that afternoon, the gang gathered near the old mine entrance, now sealed by concrete and guarded by federal signs. Fred laid a wreath of wildflowers near a plaque honoring the miners who had died decades ago. "We never got to meet the real Henry Wilcox," Daphne said quietly. "Only the shell that turned into Harper." "Do you think he started with good intentions?" Velma asked. Fred replied, "Maybe. But gold and secrets have a way of twisting people. From behind, a familiar voice chimed in, "Mason again. But courage, curiosity, and friendship can untwist them." The gang turned and smiled. As sunset painted Hollow Creek gold and red, Shaggy and Scooby set up a picnic on the hillside. "One last Scooby snack toast before we hit the road?" Shaggy asked. Scooby barked happily. "Yeah." They all gathered together, clinking soda cans and sandwich halves in the fading light. "To mysteries," said Daphne. "To truth," added Velma. "To teamwork," Fred smiled. "To naps and snacks," Shaggy declared. "And to friends," Scooby concluded, tail wagging. That night, the mystery machine rumbled out of Hollow Creek, disappearing into the trees. Behind them, the town was no longer haunted. The phantom had vanished, the lies had been unearthed, and the real treasure had been revealed, not gold, not tech, but truth, courage, and community. And somewhere, deep underground, a backup server quietly blinked. Phase 2, still waited. As the mystery machine rolled into the horizon, Hollow Creek stood peaceful once more. The ghost was gone, the gold forgotten, but the truth had set the town free. For Mystery Incorporated, another puzzle was solved, but a deeper game had just begun. With laughter in their hearts and Scooby snacks in hand, the gang drove on, ready for whatever mystery came next.